first forum on sustainable development, smart growth, AB 32, and all the nasty regulations that go with it. So, yeah. This is going to be quite an education for you, and we have the afternoon session. Of course, the evening session tonight is going to be jam-packed as well. So with that being said, I want to have us do the pledge, and then I'm going to introduce our moderator, and we'll get started. So can we all stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. At this time, I'm going to introduce David Spady, who's with Americans for Prosperity and Salem Communications. And David will be our moderator for the afternoon. Please welcome David Spady.
Well, I'm glad to be with you here from Ventura County. It was funny, the weather down here didn't get the memo on global warming. I drove over from San Diego yesterday and there was a foot of snow on the ground on the pass coming through. Unusual for this part of the country. We're glad to have you out today, and this early session is going to be focused on some of the technical aspects of the green agenda and how it's being implemented at the local level. And we have several professionals here that are going to cover a lot of different areas, so it's going to be a real treat for you. I know everybody up here could probably spend half a day on the subjects they're going to talk to you about, but we're going to have each of them speak for about 15 to 20 minutes and share with you their experiences in dealing with the radical environmental agenda here in California. Our local state assemblyman, Brian Nestandi, was unable to make it, but he does support this forum, and we wanted to share something that he had sent for you guys today.
Hey, Christina, Brian Nestandi. I want to talk to you. I've read up in your honor here on all the Agenda 21 stuff, and I've tasked my staff with looking in to see if there's anything in the state code in reference to this stuff here. And so if there is anything that we're doing at state level, we're going to look into repealing that. Anyways, call me whenever you'd like. Hope.
So our first two speakers are going to get down into some of the details as far as how local planners are dealing with this agenda. And these are two people with a wealth of experience. The first is Robert Righetti. He's a municipal planning director and engineer. He has over 30 years experience in the field of civil engineering. He's worked for over 20 cities in Southern California performing development review and peer review of environmental documentation. And we also have with us Jim Morrissey, who has spent 31 years in the field planning area and serves as a principal planner and planning director for numerous cities in the Inland Empire. He has a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's in urban planning, and has taught urban planning at Cal Poly Pomona and UCR. So they're going to team up and address us now.
Yeah, okay. Probably the best way to start out here, Jim and I basically have worked together off and on over the years on different sides of what you would normally see as the front counter at a city. If you were a developer or a person who basically had a development application, you would come into the front counter, submit that application, pay your fees, and then it would go into the capable hands of myself and Jim, and we would review it and begin writing conditions of approval and reviewing it for compliance with the regulatory element, the state laws, local laws, etc. So our job basically has been the implementation of the regulations and the regulatory element that has been passed on down to us either through the state or the feds or the local government. The key that we have come to grips with here is that there's a basic mindset that we have to have in order to do our job. We can't forget the fact that we have a founding constitution, something that guides what we do. But as planners and as processors for development applications, we're now having to change what we do because of the regulations. So Jim is going to talk briefly about what's changed in that regard. And the key is that sustainability has basically kind of changed the game for what planners have done for many years. The idea is that we're now having to do or wear a different kind of hat than what we've traditionally done. And we'll explain more about that as we go through the afternoon session, as you hear from the rest of the speakers. This quotation that we have up here is a quotation that came from the American Planning Association Guide, and they have bought into sustainability full force because it's big business. So we'll start out basically with what planners are expected to do. And essentially, it's equitably meet human needs, not hinder future generations, preserve and protect the environment and natural resources, and balance approach with nature. That's essentially what sustainability kind of drives down to. When you think about all the context of those terms, there's a lot in there. There's a lot that has to be thought about that we don't normally deal with. Jim is going to talk now about what we used to do as a planner.
Way back when.
Way back.
What we thought we'd do is take those 4 elements, which are really the elements out of the APA statement. And by the way, I am a member of APA. I've been a member for 32 years. But the focus of what they are interested in has changed over the years. So instead of being more locally focused, it's focused on other things. And by that, and why that's important, is the emphasis and the time spent by the local planner has changed. They can't focus on local issues all the time. They can't focus on local needs. They're concerned about sustainability. They're concerned about smart growth. They're concerned about greenhouse gases. And why that's important is that that does not come from you in the audience. That comes from someone else. So if you have an 8-hour day and you're expected to meet the needs of you, the citizens, well, these other things are starting to crowd it out. So you spend less time. So therefore, your attention has changed, your focus has changed. What I was telling Bob before the meeting is, please don't run to your local council and say, you're not doing these things any longer. Well, they are. They're just not as focused on them. Their attention is diverted. They're looking at them differently. What's the next one? Foreseeable future. That is so important. My son is 19. When he was born, his mother and I thought, you know, we'd like him to go to college. That was a foreseeable future. We could understand that time period. He's in college. He's 19. So we fulfilled that window, if you will. But what happens after that? How do you look at future generations? I don't know if he's going to get married. I hope he gets married. I hope he has a family. I hope he has a job he loves. But I don't know anything about that, and I can't predict that. I can't predict in my job what I'm going to work on in 2 months. So we need to have an intuitive understanding of what the future period really is, instead of just saying, in the next 100 years we have to plan for. You can't do that. Protect the environment. Zoning and planning started off with health and safety. I'll mention one word, tenements. What does it bring to mind? Crowding. It brings together disease, fire hazard. Zoning was set up to allow light and air to come in, to prevent fire from being spread place to place. People didn't understand disease then, but they understood that there was spacing and open space, that there was less of it. So we do that, and they do it now, but now it's taken to the extreme. We need study after study after study, and all of a sudden the environmental document in the minds of the public decides whether or not a project gets approved. And that isn't the way it should be, and that's not the way it is actually in the law. But the perception is You rely upon the environmental document to determine the appropriateness of a project. What's our next one? Oh, what's in your city? Cities are places for human habitation. They're urban places. You live, work, and play there. We have always decided if there's enough parkland, fire service, jobs, housing. But now the balance is the regional balance. We have to make sure homes are allocated properly throughout the region. Well, what about your city? Housing in each city is fundamental to your civic development. If you have large lots and apartments, you have two different types of people. You have people who have different income levels, different positions, different status, if you will. They may be young, they may be old and retired, they may be business leaders, they may be employees starting at the bottom of the rung. You need that variety of housing types to assist your city in ideas, in leadership, in having good council members, good planning commissioners, good civic leaders to help build your city. Go ahead, Bob.
The aspect that's changing for us in our business is, as Jim pointed out, we really have been doing all the things that sustainability talks about, but really within the parameters of real life and achievable things, things that we can quantify and address. What's happened with sustainable development is that now we're expected to begin re-educating the public. When you go through the American Planning Association policies and a lot of the Agenda 21 and sustainable development documentation that's on the website, you're gonna realize that they know what we've been doing won't work anymore. And so what they have started to do, actually they've been doing this now for about 10 to 15 years, is they are re-educating the public. They are re-educating the policymakers. They are re-educating our judiciary. They are re-educating our children. Not too long ago, in fact it was just a couple of weeks ago, I saw an article in the Press Enterprises, which is our local newspaper in Riverside. The article basically said that 70% of the children coming out of high school and entering college are now on the liberal left. Well, that's interesting, but when you think about it, you have to ask yourself, well, why? Why is 70% of the kids coming out of high school and going into college liberal left? What's changing? What's happening in that high school? Well, what's changing is this. They are re-educating the youth to begin to adapt to this whole new way of thinking. So we have to practice with a new mindset. We have to change the vernacular, the type of language we use, and we have to basically create a whole new industry of planning, which when you look at a college program now for planning and master's degrees in planning, it's completely different from what we used to have. It's just based on an entirely new world vision. So the question that we have then is, how can that be done? Well, for one thing, they make it very plain that this cannot be done with the regulations that we have. And so there are going to be a lot of new regulations that are going to have to come down out of Sacramento and out of the federal government that are going to begin changing how local governments do business. This isn't a matter of local governance being able to decide how they will live and how their community is shaped. It's going to be a matter of basically working with those local planners. Those local planners now have to be re-educated to understand how sustainable development is implemented within the community. This means that they now have to start becoming social engineers, so to speak, because they have to deal with social equity, they have to deal with environmental justice, they have to deal with social justice, they have to deal with racial justice, they have to deal with all kinds of aspects that are really not the job of a planner. But that's where it's going. And the other thing is that it cannot be done without the change in your mindset. That means that we really have to change how we have been viewing things all along. Our mindset has to change. One of the classics, and I'll have a slide on this this evening, is that they cannot accept the fact that property rights are primary. They cannot accept some of the language, for example, that's in our Constitution, which is the reason why Ruth Bader Ginsburg was recently on Egyptian television saying that if she were to start over and write a whole new constitution for a government, she would not use the U.S. Constitution as the base. She would use something that was more recent, that reflected the contemporary mindset that we're dealing with today. That's not where planners should be, and that's not where our legislators should be. They should be basing what they do on the Constitution of the United States and on the founding principles that we established this country on, which was on the individualism of every single person and every community in this country. The other thing is that it cannot, as I pointed out, it cannot be done without our current Constitution and economic system, and that's what they're against. They're going to change it, and when our administration is currently in place said that we're talking about major change, that's the major change. Those things have to change, and that re-education process has to keep going. If you were afraid of someday the government locking you up in a prison camp, in a re-education camp with bars, and basically changing over how you think, you don't have to worry about that. It's going on right now. No bars, no jails, no anything. It's happening as you live and breathe and as you go about your daily activities. When you watch television, when your kids go to school, when you read magazines, when you read the newspaper, that re-education process is an ongoing thing, and it's happening. So what can we do? Well, we're going to have to start locally. We're going to have to start being active locally, start changing the way that we push back locally, because you can't just accept these things and just say, oh, well, you know, it's all for the better. No, it isn't, because those drastic changes will mean the loss of a lot of rights. The question is what are those changes worth? Are they worth giving up your liberty, as we showed from Benjamin Franklin? If we're going to give up liberty for just a little bit of security, then we've lost it. It's gone. The other is planning level. I mean, we have to really begin dealing with our planners and our legislators on the type of regulations that they pass and how they enforce our land use plans and our general plans. Go to those meetings, go to the planning commission meetings, go to the city council meetings and begin giving them your input. Listen to what's going on. If you don't, it's just going to happen, and then you're going to be sitting wondering, how did this all happen? It will just do it. The education level is also, as I pointed out, our kids are being educated. We're giving over that education to a state school system, essentially, that's programming these kids to go that way. If you don't get involved with that, that's the way it's going to happen. Inactivity is basically giving up. As Bonhoeffer said, or Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, that you know, if you don't take a stand, you took a stand, and that's the way it is. And then on a market level, we really have to start pushing free market principles and free market activity. You know, when a developer shows up at a city council meeting with his project, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that that room will be packed with environmental groups. They'll bus them in from as far away as Tucson, Arizona. Yep. And they'll be there protesting that project. But there's hardly anybody there from the local community to back up that developer. There's nobody there to speak to his side, nobody there to speak to his rights, except for him. And that shouldn't be. We as citizens should be speaking out for the individual rights that we have in this country and for that person's property rights, because it's our property rights as well that we're speaking out for. And then on the individual family level, we really need to work on that, because it's the families that are the basis, the foundation of everything that we have. If we don't work on that, then the rest of the things really won't matter anyway. And so we really have to encourage, through our churches and other organizations, to begin solidifying and strengthening those families in whatever manner you do, whether it's through faith in God or through faith in yourself. But you have to start restoring the family values and make those families strong. So this is kind of a kickoff for our program this afternoon, and Jim and I, we wanted to share what we see as changing in our industry. And we're going to let some of the other folks here talk about this. And again, as I said, it's about getting back to founding principles. We need to reach back so that we can establish that for our community.
All right, well, let's give them a round of applause. And Robert's closing remarks on what you can do is really what this is all about, because it's one thing to come here and hear about things that trouble us, but if we don't take action, nobody else is going to. And so that's the takeaway from this entire session today, is that we have to put boots on the ground and do what we can to weigh in and protect our property rights. That was a great description and understanding of what happens from an urban standpoint when we talk about environmental engineering, but we're going to shift now to a rural emphasis.
What I hope you get from this talk is that this is not just happening in our area, what I have to share with you, but it's coming to your area very soon, if not already. So anyway, this is about rebranding history, and we all know that Michelle Obama wants to rewrite history, and I think we need to reverse her agenda. So how many know what's happening in Siskiyou County? How many have heard of Siskiyou County, what's going on with the dams? And there was I didn't put this in the slide, but yesterday actually, we got Ken Salazar, who's our director of the Secretary of the Interior, the Department of the Interior. Oh, great. So can you go back? Okay, I'll just start here. So I live in San Carlos. It's in the Bay Area, and so I know that a lot of you have heard about the One Bay Area plan, Heather Goss, and we've got some YouTube videos out there about what we've been doing in the visioning plan. And I'm not here to talk about that, but when I go up to Siskiyou County, where my parents' ranch is, I do tell them that Mom, Dad, the Bay Area where I live, we're getting ready for you guys to move down. So with the stack and pack housing, the vertical farming, all the bike paths that are being created, the bike bridges, the walkways, this is where we're heading. So it's about connecting the dots. So whether you live in the city or you live in the rural lands, what's happening in the rural lands is farmers and ranchers are under attack. Our rural lands are being locked up, public roads are being closed, the land around public lakes is being bought, and our freedom is being stolen right now. So we are experiencing the onslaught of UN Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. My prediction for Rio 20 is this is it. My prediction for Rio plus 20 is that the United Nations is going to set their own EPA up to be the world governance for all environmental issues. And how come I say this? Because I'm reading their documents. I'm reading their current documents, and they are very scary. So I think unless we do something drastic, maybe we show up to Rio 20, we get the word out as fast as possible, that this Earth Summit could be a nail in our coffin, or the nail in our coffin. So our government's goal is to change our behavior. And how they're doing this is through our regulatory czar, Cass Sunstein. And he has a really interesting book that you might want to read called Nudge. And they think we have a little Homer Simpson in us. They think we're stupid, and that they can manipulate us into their agenda. So this is a slide from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and why I'm showing you this is because they're trying to change our behavior about what is ranching and farming. So if you look at the bottom, I love this. They want to change us from consumer ownership to rental service model. This was presented to our own government. Here's another one. They want us to go to manual egg beaters, air drying our clothes, and you should be playing a guitar instead of watching television. You should be biking versus driving. In fact, by 2050, you may have no car. You may be walking and biking only. You might want to look at America2050.org. Anyway, the other thing is that they want our lifestyle decisions to change. They want us to think that a shared home is okay. So, you and the cow. So why is it important that you find out about who you are with the cow? Again, they are trying to change our views on what ranching and farming is. So how many people ate beef today? How many of you are wearing leather today or touched leather? So experts say that we ranchers and farmers were causing global warming. In fact, agriculture, according to the FAO and the WHO and the WTO, all UN organizations, say that we are the leading cause for global warming. So ranching destroys forests. We've destroyed the Amazon. Our cows take more drinking water from you, and we also cause obesity. This is a picture from our own california.gov website, and as you can see, mostly everything in a traditional farm causes global warming except for that wind turbine. So the experts are wrong. The biomethane from livestock is actually being used for fuel. Our cows actually improve the environment. They are the best grazers and recyclers. We ranchers, we take care of our land, and I declare nobody loves our land more than we do. We feed and create life. Over 50% of the food-producing land is not usable, but it's grazable. Our cows even help forests and maintain forests, which are absolutely being mismanaged to the point where animals, wild animals, are coming down to neighborhoods because they can't live in shade. There's no food in shade. So you've got coyotes coming down, you've got wolves coming down. And the cow also provides zip, and I'll get into that in just a second. And our cows do not cause obesity. So beef nutrition, and this is something you can take with you today. 3 ounces of beef, the size of your palm, has as much nutrients as eating 12 3-ounce cans of tuna. It also has protein, and it also has B12, which is great for your brain and nervous system. But to get 3 ounces of beef of B12, you're gonna have to eat 7 chickens. So where's the livestock in this picture? How many think that 50% of this slide is livestock byproduct? How many think it's more than 50%? How many think it's 100%? 100% of that slide is from cows. So you might be going, okay, what does a cow have to do with a car besides leather seats? Well, the fat of the cow actually creates, and bullets too. It's the only product so far that we know that can round out the ball bearings, make the bullets so smooth that they, anyway, hopefully that explains it. Paint, insulation, sheetrock, asphalt. So I wonder where these environmentalists who hate our cows so much, I wonder how they're going to live when they take out the cow. So everywhere is the cow. And our friends say that we, again, are causing global warming. And what this means for us is we will have less choice as consumers, and our food prices will be higher. So here's a little video with sound. This is my parents' place.
An old man turned 98. He won the lottery and died the next day. It's a black fly in your Chardonnay. It's a death row pardon, 2 minutes too late. And isn't it ironic? Don't you think? It's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you've already paid.
So So all these planners think that's unsustainable. So now on to Siskiyou County, and I understand I'm like running out of time. So what's happening in Siskiyou County? We've got a lot going on. We have the wildland, we believe we are the Wildlands Pet Project on speed. So with the America Great Outdoors Initiative and the Habitat Migration Corridor Map that the California Department of Fish and Game, the Department of Transportation, and Caltrans put together, which is about linking all land where animals migrate, we believe that we are the pilot program for what's to come. So Obama also has the opportunity this year to monumentalize over 10 million acres in our area. Siskiyou County, by the way, is up above Mount Shasta. And the monumentalization will happen with Southern Oregon. It will be called Climate Refuge. The Klamath Dam removal that is up for determination right now, actually it's just been postponed because we've been fighting, will be the largest dam removal in history. These dams are owned by Warren Buffett. They're 4 hydroelectric dams. They provide clean energy to over 70,000 homes. The other thing that's happening is our own government agencies are rewriting regulations. And then they're creating new regulations that are getting us off our land. They're forcing us off through high prices and regulations that we can't keep up with. Also, what's happening in Siskiyou County is the Nature Conservancy is partnering with the Department of Fish and Game, buying ranches everywhere using your money. So private properties to the United States, as we truly believe in private property rights, but to the United Nations, private property is discriminatory. So down with the dams and down with the people. So over 1,000 US dams have been removed already. Billions of acre feet of stored water that we use to irrigate our lands, to flush our toilets, to cook our food. Patagonia, REI, Royal Robin, Prana, they're all for dam removal. In fact, Patagonia has a goal of over 100 dams removed this year. The Elwha and the Condon in northwest in Washington and Oregon already destroyed, and our Secretary of the Interior celebrated. So the main thing here is that with Klamath Dam removal, it'll be called full basin management. It means any tributaries that are flowing into the Klamath River will be controlled. In fact, the Department of Fish and Game in many meetings has told us they want 80% of all water going straight out to sea. So we had an environmental impact report and an environmental study done on the Klamath River. It was about 3,000 pages long. We had to read it, and then we had to comment on it. And it's full of holes and bunk science. So just yesterday, the Secretary Salazar decided to put off the decision. But what my dad told me today is that the tribes and the groups, the agencies that were part of the 10-year secret agreements to have these dams removed are already meeting in secret meetings. So the Klamath River, if it's removed, will be 20 million cubic yards of sediment washing out to sea. So the very same fish, the coho salmon, they are claiming they are going to save, will destroy whatever endangered species is along the river, is along in and around the river, and this is okay for the government. 20 million cubic yards is about 12,500 miles around the earth, or halfway around the earth. So they're going to breach the dam and let all this toxin wash out to sea. So government has violated many laws already. This is, we're not going to play this, but you may have seen.
Well, actually, the main reason
you may
we're
have
here
seen
is, to
this
protect
video. This was
rural
done in
America.
Siskiyou County, and the reason it happened, you can stop it.
For Northern California, these land
You can
and
go
water
move
issues are
forward.
going to.
So that sheriff's conference happened as a result of the Bay Area people and the Siskiyou County people getting together. We are in the crosshairs of many issues. We know that we are the Wildlands Project. And there's also a whole other issue called bioeconomics and biomass that I recommend everybody start looking into. So what can you do? You can talk about this everywhere. The whole thing is about educating yourself, which was said earlier. Research all the non-government organizations, Sierra Club, Nature Conservancy. I mean, it's just list and list. In fact, this Rio Summit is going to, they're going to have over 1,500 NGOs after the summit get together and plan how they're going to implement this. The NGOs are the new stakeholders of the world. We are not. So it's all about connecting the dots. If you look at what the UN is all about, they have a theme about being one program, one leader, one money, it's all one. If you look at around the United States, we're having similar themes in different areas. In my area, it's one Bay Area, but it's the same darn thing. So here's some videos you can watch. Online right now, Vimeo, great video called Crying Wolf. They're releasing wolves, protected wolves with collars, so if you kill that wolf, it's killing your livestock and you kill it, it's going to be found on your property and you go to jail. Another one, you can watch our One Bay Area meetings, the visioning meetings. You may know Heather Goss, that's Heather Goss right there. Another one is Farmageddon. And when you put these together along with, and Farmageddon is a private viewing, but it's worth it. And when you put the Siskiyou County videos together that you can look up on YouTube, you get what's happening. We are being taken over. And what you can do is re-educate the public, help unite ranchers and farmers across California, promote small family byproducts and beef products. Be careful of the words local and organic when you buy your food. The USDA has trademarked the word organic, but a lot of us ranchers are natural beef, so go natural. Support your constitutional sheriff, write to your congressman or congresswoman often, respond to articles in newspapers right away to set the record straight, and be the example of honor and integrity. And pray for our country and our patriots, because our game is kind of like Survivor, and we need to outwit, outplay, outlast, outsmart, and outlaw these people.
As a county supervisor who has a planning department underneath them and all the things they try to tell you why we got to do this, this is really good information about this re-education and everything going on. I mean, what you're learning here is tremendous because you have the real facts. You got people that are in the business telling you what they're trying to do, and it is a re-education. And what I just wanted to spend a little bit of time to talk about was a little bit of that education, because we have been re-educated for a long time, and I don't even know if we know it. Let me go back and start what I believe was one of the greatest re-educations in America. From the start of this country to about 1913, 1912, how was the income of the country done? How did the government get money? Tariffs and levies, right? That's right. That's how they got money. And then what happened in 1913? They did an income tax. An income tax, and who was it on? On millionaires. Think about that in 1913. How much money would you be making? That's like the multi-billionaires today, right? That's what it was. And so, doesn't affect you, no big deal, it's on those people. And did we see people stop it? No, they didn't, did they? And then, you know, once government gets a hold of your income, they own everything. Do you believe the government owns your income right now? No, you don't, do you? I say they do. I say, how many of you work for an employer? Okay, there's a few of you. Well, some hard-working entrepreneurial people out there. I love this. Or maybe some retired. Or how about who worked for an employer? Okay, there you go. All right. So if you're working there and you get your paycheck and they take out some number of your taxes. But I'm telling you, if our President Obama said, you must take 100% of that paycheck, Mr. Employer, or else you will go to jail, what would that employer have to do? Take 100% of your paycheck. The idea that you own your money is not true. The idea is they own it. And I think it was John Adams who said that originally, is once they get a hold of your income, they've got everything. And that's what they did. So what now is the government owns it all, and they allow you to have a little bit of it. And that's part of that whole thing was that, anyway, so we were educated. And then as life went on, it wasn't just the 1 millionaires, wasn't anymore. We came in and we slowly educate. You need to give the government money. You need to slowly do that. And then we started to see other things. Zoning laws came in, didn't they? And what did we hear about from these gentlemen today? Originally they came in was to building standards and laws for public safety, right? Public safety to protect you. And it was all about good government. We saw that. Then we saw things like homeowner associations come involved. Anybody been involved in one of those? Right, there you go. And they tell you what you can do and what you can't do, don't they? They do. They start to control. All the way down to saying, it's good for your property. It's good for you that we do this. But during this progressive change, people started to believe that others could control their property. What did she just talk about? Others controlling this property. But it was all because it's going to help your property values, right? It's all for you. See, this is an education process that we've been slowly over the years starting to believe. I remember my father when I was a kid. I'd say, I'm going to go do this. I'm not sure we could do that. When I was a kid, you could go do that kind of stuff. Now they don't let you. How many kids do you hear nowadays say, oh, they don't allow you to do that? They don't allow you to do this. That's a mindset that has been brought into you, the educating you, where it's re-educating you. And how many generations now do we have that believe this? David has a tremendous book. I think you talked about it. The things that these kids are learning nowadays is crazy. But let me just kind of go through this as generations have grown up believing that they cannot do the things with their own property that they want to. They've lost their rights. But somebody else can tell you what you can do. In my county, it is, like I said, David, it's one of the most restrictive. It's a beautiful place. Who's been to Ventura County? Who's been to the Reagan Library? Yeah, it's a beautiful place. But it is the most restrictive county in California, guaranteed. They say, I got a supervisor who put what we call a SOAR program, it's the most restrictive county in America. You can live 100 miles away in the county, and all of a sudden, this little piece of farmland right next to a commercial piece, I'd like to have it annexed so I can use it for commercial. Guess what? You have to have what they call a SOAR vote. That means that person 100 miles away has to vote on if it's all right for you to take that 1 acre in. Can you believe that? And because there was a church right next that wanted a piece of property right next to a city, right next to city limits, they wanted to take 135 acres and use about 5 acres of it, and because they couldn't find a piece big enough in the city to use, they wanted to take that piece and take 5 acres of it and have it for a church. And then another group alongside it was called the Hunger Fund. It feeds millions of people around the world. They wanted to put that together. And then they were going to donate all the rest of that 120 plus acres to open space. These supervisors said, there's no way you are putting anything on our open space. And you know what they did? They passed a law, 4-1. I was the one who voted against it. You can't even have assembly use in the open space of any kind. Assembly use. So if Harvard says, hey, we want to come out and put a university, there's no big place in any of the cities, in the 12, 15 cities in Ventura County, we want to put it right there, right next to this nice big open space right here. Can't have it. No way. Can't have assembly use at all. You can't have people gather for any kind of a business purpose. However, the state of California, though, can come in and take that land right now and do anything they want with it because it's a government agency. Those are the kind of rights that are being taken away. And why I say this is we have been programmed, slowly programmed. And my whole thing is now, when I have all these farmers come in, and I've got the 11th largest county in the state of California, agriculture county, about $2 billion. Not large in the sense of land mass, but because of the high crops we have and the dollar amount. But we are sitting there daily trying to protect these farm owners, and because I look at farmers not as the farmer has a little red farm with this little silo up there. These are businesses. These are business owners trying to do a business. And this state is taking away every opportunity for them to do it. You start off with making water so difficult for them to get, as we had talked about. I mean, destroying these people. And if you go down to San Diego, David, you were in San Diego last night. And you're right there, you right? There's no water, is there? All these orchards are going dry. All these people are losing. And there's no value for that land. There's no use for that land. Your property rights to live the California dream are being taken away because of these rights. And that's what's going on. And so we see that day in and day out. And the little things that come in, as you talk about planning, we look at that. All of a sudden in ours, oh, we want to have, help the farmers grow, but we want to control what goes on. So if they have a big rain and, a little bit of a hillside comes down on top of one of their roads, anytime you move more than 100 yards of dirt or even 50 yards of dirt, you better get a permit to clean your road off. That's how difficult it gets to be. I mean, it's unbelievable of what we're dealing with here. And this is what is happening to you. You are being re-educated. But that's all in, as I hear from every one of my supervisors, well, that's all good government. Whatever got to the point where the government's got to tell me what is good? Whatever happened to you knowing and understanding that you have the rights to say what is right for your property? And what has come to, this is how I look at property nowadays. The idea is that you buy it, you have to pay to maintain it. You got to rent it from the government. Even if you own it, you got to pay property tax, right? You have to do it. And then the masses are going to tell you what to do with it, right? That's exactly what it is. In my county, if you went out and spent $3 million to be in a beautiful lot overlooking the valley, now they have it where they can tell you where you put your house, the size of where your house is going to be, what the silhouette will look like, and how it's painted. That's what has happened to your rights. And if we allow this to continue, you will have no rights. As we were talking earlier, we were talking on this issue was, this to me, I believe, the education process has come to this last generation. When enough of these kids grow up understanding that I cannot do what I'd like to do with my property, at this point, I just go along and I'm just herded down the aisle, and that's where I go. That's where we're at. Because again, I hear it all the time. Well, there's nothing we can do. As these people have said, they're telling you that, but it's not in the law, right? It's not in the law. But that's what you're told. Because you don't have people like this, these gentlemen up here, telling you the truth. And unless you're, like she said, unless you're willing to fight and continue to fight, that truth will never be told. That will never, ever be told. And it's your responsibility. People ask, where do you think the Tea Party came from? I can tell you where that came from. David and I were up in Sacramento, was it 4 years ago now, David? Trying to put together a big event on taxes. We worked our tail off, gave away t-shirts, did everything. I think we must have spent $40,000 to get 300 people to show up at the steps of the Capitol. It was unbelievable what it took. Then all of a sudden, people took a look at their government, and they didn't like what they saw. And the next time, we didn't spend a dime. We have 7, 8, 10, 15,000 people at the steps of the Capitol saying, enough is enough. We're not going to pay this. We're not going to do this. And I think you saw the whole Tea Party movement come all across America because they took a look at their government and didn't like what they saw. Because our form of government is, I elect you, and then you go to work as government, and you're supposed to protect my rights. You're supposed to keep my rights. And then all of a sudden, I'm starting to pay attention, and I realize you're taking my rights. You're taking my property. You're taking my life. You're taking away my ability to live the California dream and the American dream. That's what we saw. And so the Tea Party was a group of people that started all of a sudden. It wasn't any one group, because I remember sitting in one of those and going, how many are Democrats? How many are Independents? How many Republicans? It was all across the board. It was just people who believed their rights were being taken from them, and they were now willing to stand up and say, I'm here to take a look at you and to make sure what you do. And I've always said, people who don't vote are going to have somebody influence their life. And if you want to have influence on who influences your life, you better vote. And that's what's happening. And this exactly what she said. If you don't go out, speak it, talk it, educate it, attend this, put these kind of symposiums on every place, it's all going to be taken from you. It's all going to be taken from you. You know, we as Americans Prosperity, as a free market organization, believe that the people of California, the people of America, understand how to manage their own lives. And that means managing their own property. We did a video just the other day, and let me just read what one of the things we did in this video. Everybody seen our videos? Yeah, you guys seen them? Get on our website if you don't. You're going to see David's face an awful lot. This is what it said. Founding Father John Adams once warned, the moment the idea admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the law of God, and that there is not a force of law and public justice to protect it, anarchy and tyranny commence. We understand that? If it's not as sacred as the law of God, that is what is at stake here. That the idea that your property rights are so sacred, because once they get a hold of your property, something you've worked for, something you slave for, something you take pride in, and they take it and tell you what they want done with it, everything else is lost. Everything else is lost. That's why you're starting to see the idea that even with health care, do you think health care is about health care? No. Health care is about rights. Because once I tell you, yeah, I'm going to pay for your health care, I tell you what you eat, you can't ride a horse on her parents' ranch because you could fall off and get hurt. You have to wear a helmet when you ride a motorcycle. Whatever it is, because now I control everything you do. That's what you have to understand. This whole thing about, well, we want to have good, sustainable, we want to control this, we want to have everybody live on top, smart growth, have everybody live there together. That's why I don't vote, I hate to say it, if you guys love to ride bikes, I vote against bike trails all the time. Not that they're, I have a bike. Not that they're not bad. Well, first of all, if only 5% of the people ride bikes, I don't want to waste all the money for your road money to go to bike trails. But on the other side, there's a mindset that is put together that you are going to have bike trails. We put all this around, we just do it, and finally, okay, now we can try to control your car. Californians have always realized, I want to live in this car. I'm willing to pay the dollars it takes. So understand that this is what this education piece is. It started, I believe, 100 years ago to slowly start to educate you, and it's like the frog in the pot. We just kept swimming around, and we slowly turned the heat up. And all of a sudden, boom, they turned the heat up really quick, and that's when the Tea Party came out. And they paid attention. But all of a sudden, it's back down a little bit. And even people in Washington are trying to squash the Tea Party movement. And again, I call the Tea Party movement, I don't look at that as a Republican movement. I look at that as just people that care about this country and believe in the rights that we were given under God. Remember, we had a revolution because a king told us what to do, didn't we? And we said, no, we come here because we believe we have inalienable rights from God and we get to make decisions for ourselves. And that government works for us. Now as we're hearing about the education of what they're trying to do to us, which is to re-educate us into property. And don't ever, ever believe, well, it's only property, it's not that big a deal. It is the core. It is the core. If you read what the original Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, when it talked about property rights, if you read and you talk about that, the pursuit of happiness, it really was the pursuit of property and the control of property rights. There's a couple reasons because of slavery that was going on in this country at that time. They couldn't put that in there. But that's how strong property rights are, because if you lose your property right, you lose everything. So listen to everything you're hearing go on here. Everything. Learn it. Be able to explain it. Because I'm telling you, they're going to come at you. They're going to come after you. They're going to demean you. They're going to criticize you when you talk this way. But it is the core of what this country was founded on. It's the core of what your future is, your future to live the California dream. Remember, California, we live here, is the greatest, I believe, the greatest state in the nation. And all of a sudden, in these last few years, we talk about, wow, it's terrible. But is it really terrible? Are all the issues we have really issues? They're all man-made issues. We were talking earlier, 40 years ago, who made more cars than any place outside of Michigan? California. Who had the largest shipyards in the country? California. Who grew more crops than anybody else that fed the world? California. Who had more movies being any place else in the world? California. Who had the greatest defense industry in the world? California. Greatest high tech, California. Greatest place to live, California. Where'd all the new ideas come out of? California. All that was here. Now, I don't see you people looking any different than you did 30, 40 years ago, maybe a little more gray hair. It's all here, but it's man-made problems because of what they believe is important to take your rights away. As I said earlier in an interview on the radio, right now, do you believe somebody with a great idea, a great animator, could all of a sudden say, I want to take this animation and make the greatest place on earth? Could that happen in California? Could he go to Anaheim, take a strawberry field and turn it into Disneyland in California? Never happened, would it? Never happened. That was the kind of place California used to be. And because out of our prosperity, we always put a little extra burden. We did a little extra on air, a little extra on water. We did all that. But we said that was okay. But what's happened now is the weight of all this has come onto California, and California now cannot do that any longer. They cannot support it. And so this is our opportunity to say enough is enough and to turn this back. But it's going to be a fight. Let me tell you, it's going to be a fight. And I believe every one of you are up for it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So thanks again. Hope to talk to you soon again. Bye.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker is Darcy Brandon. She's an award-winning landscape architect who's been practicing in Southern California for about 20 years. And she has seen the impact of government regulations, policies, and fees and how they affect the building industry at large and the individual homeowner who just wants to build their dream oasis. One of the things that I was reading about recently up in our neck of the woods was somebody who wanted to build a home in Malibu, but because of the visual blight, but from boats offshore, the Coastal Commission was preventing their building this house. So you were giving the rights basically to that landowner's property and what they wanted to do with it from somebody who was going by that property.
Good evening. Thank you for coming this evening. Like he said, I am a landscape architect, and I've been practicing in California for about 25 years. And over this time, I've noticed more and more regulations being implemented, usually under the banner of health, safety, and welfare. Oh, you've got my word. Okay, thanks. So I'm going to talk about implementing Agenda 21 through EPA regulations. So what is the big deal with these regulations? On the surface, sustainable development is promoted and marketed as a positive method of developing land. However, it's actually about taking control of your private property and turning it into publicly controlled property. So our country was founded, like we heard, on private property rights, and Agenda 21 is the antithesis to that philosophy. Sustainable development, smart growth, etc., are steeped in the environmental movement of the 60s and 70s. And our society has shifted from its original Judeo-Christian basis, where we are commanded by God to be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now contrast that with the humanistic environmental religion, where Gaians teach that the earth goddess, or Mother Earth, must be protected from destructive human activity. It is this belief that fuels the environmental movement, sustainable development, and a global push for the return of industrialized nations to a more primitive way of life. Many prominent environmental leaders, politicians, scientists, and religious leaders profess a literal belief in Gaia, or the earth goddess. So now I want to take you on a very quick history lesson of the environmental movement. So this will be a quick lesson. And it started in around 1962 with Rachel Carson's book, The Silent Spring, where she exposed the detrimental effects of DDT. 1968, we had the Club of Rome formed. In 1970, we had the first Earth Day. The EPA was established under President Nixon, and the Clean Air Act was passed. In 1972, the Clean Water Act was passed, and the first UN Conference on the Environment was held. And the Club of Rome released the first book here, The Limits to Growth. And basically what this can be summarized is, as overpopulation will result in sudden and uncontrollable decline of the environment, and environmental sustainability was coined. In 1974, the Club of Rome released the second book, Mankind at the Turning Point, which states that the world is facing overpopulation, food shortages, non-renewable resource depletion, environmental degradation, and poor governance. And in this book, it states that the world has cancer, and the cancer is man. We had the oil embargo in 1974. In 1982, the environmental justice movement began, and Clinton signed an executive order in 1994 dealing with environmental justice. In 1987, the EPA reported that climate change is the biggest environmental threat. In 1992, we had the release of Agenda 21 at the Rio Earth Summit. The Club of Rome put out another document entitled The First Global Revolution, The Time to Act Had Run Out. And in this publication, they stated, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill nicely. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. In 1993, President Clinton put out this publication, Sustainable America, A New Consensus. 97, Clinton signed the federal actions in the Lake Tahoe region, or Keep Tahoe Blue. In 2002, we had the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa. In 2006, An Inconvenient Truth came out, Al Gore's film and book. 2007, the Supreme Court rules that CO2 and other greenhouse gases are pollutants. Now, do you recall your fourth grade biology lesson where they taught you that we exhale carbon dioxide and plants take that in, use it for photosynthesis, and their output is oxygen, and it's a cycle that just keeps going? So, yeah, I don't quite understand that one, but anyway. 2009, EPA makes the official finding that greenhouse gases are a major air pollutant and subject to the Clean Air Act. So how are these regulations being used? Here we have, and I talked about this afternoon, the Stormwater Best Management Practices with the Clean Water Act. And this ties into Agenda 21, and again, this is Agenda 21, 300 pages, 40 chapters that deals with pretty much every aspect of your life. And so the Clean Water Act ties into Section 2, Chapter 18, Protection of the Quality and Supply of Freshwater Resources. Now, originally, the Clean Water Act was instituted as a point source pollutant bill to prevent chemicals and whatnot from being released into waterways. It has morphed from there to now regulate entire watersheds. And you'll hear a lot about best management practices. In the landscape industry, we have to prevent stormwater runoff from projects, but it's also in your homes, and you'll know it as the high efficiency washers or your low flow toilets. And then also there are the water permitting regulations, and in California there are permit requirements for stormwater, and they are proposing that new permits will increase the cost of permitting by 3 times of what it is currently. And then we have the Endangered Species Act, and I showed you these this afternoon. Here we have the Delta smelt. The Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973 to prevent the extinction of animals and plants that are drastically declining and exist in extremely low numbers. And this begs the question, what is more important, plants and animals or human life and sustenance? We've got the California gnatcatcher that lives in the coastal chaparral. And then we have the burrowing beetle. So you've all heard about the Keystone Pipeline. Well, these little beetles live in the Midwest area, and they had to do biologist reports to find if these little critters lived where the Keystone Pipeline was being proposed. So what is smart growth? Now, if you are here this afternoon, you can't give away my secret. So if I told you that smart growth and sustainable development has some advantages, such as it is more equitable, that everybody gets to live together, we have mixed income levels and diverse ethnic backgrounds and diverse family structures all living in the same area, that high density promotes a sense of community and collective values. Well, isn't that what we all want? Community and common values. And high density development allows easy access to public transportation. And the economic advantages of public transit for getting commuters to and from work are obvious, and it is also an answer to congestion in the city. I mean, doesn't that all sound great? But if I told you that these advantages do not come from the APA's Smart Growth Guidebook, and it's not my theory, but instead it comes from a book written almost 50 years ago that was put out by the University of Moscow planners, and it was entitled The Ideal Communist City. So here we have smart growth principles and a development in Encinitas that is considered smart growth. There's retail and offices on the bottom, there's living quarters on the top, parking is underneath. It's about 2 blocks from the transit station, 2 blocks from downtown Encinitas. And here we have a comparison of the ideal communist city with smart growth. And in virtually every category, they are identical. The only 2 places where they differ are at the bottom between the private interiors and the height of the building. But the rest are all the same. So we've got high density housing, mixed use developments, mixed income housing, transit oriented development, discourages auto parking, calls suburbs monotonous, minimizes private yards, and maximizes common areas. And then we have the Department of Agriculture. And the thing with the Department of Agriculture is they have a bill called the Farm Bill, and they have to put it out about every 5 years, and it contains 15 different titles dealing with various things such as commodity crops, horticulture, food, livestock, conservation, rural development, energy, forestry, and several others. And the one thing in here that is rather disturbing is the conservation portion of this bill. Basically, these are land retirement programs called conservation reserve programs or the farmland protection program. And here's a map of the United States. Now this is from 2007. I got this directly off the NRCS website, and so the numbers aren't real up to date, but as of 2007, California had between 1,000 and 2,500 acres in this program. They also have a wetlands reserve program through the USDA to lock off any areas that might have wetlands. And then there's also the grasslands reserve program where they will put grasslands into these conservation acres as well. And here we have the National Forest Systems land, which is part of the USDA. And they have a policy called the Roadless Areas Initiatives, or the Travel Management Plans. This was instituted under the Clinton administration, and basically this is prohibiting road construction, reconstruction, and timber harvest in inventoried roadless areas because they have the greatest likelihood of altering, fragmenting landscapes. They provide areas for populations of threatened and endangered species, and they provide large undisturbed landscapes for biological diversity. And this is happening all over the West. Then we have the Wildlands Project. Let me just skip through that one. And if you look at this map, all the red areas are proposed to be locked off for wildland corridors. The yellow areas are buffer zones, so you know, they don't want you being in the buffer zone. And if you can pick out the little green areas, that's where they want people to live. So as you can see, they want the United States to go back to what they consider pre-Columbian era, where it's all open and we don't have cars anymore and that sort of thing. So this Wildlands Project came out of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. It calls for urgent action to reverse the effects of unsustainable human activities on global diversity and promotes wildlife corridors. And there are several NGOs that are implementing this, such as the Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy. Then we have the White House Council on Rural Lands, and this is just crazy because we've got pretty much every department of the U.S. government involved, and then several agencies also involved in that. I think that's it. And then I forgot to mention with these open space easements or these preservation areas, the Morongo Basin is an area that is being proposed to have lots of land locked up in these open space easements. And so that also ties into this whole Agenda 21 stuff. This is a map of the from the BLM website. And again, notice where these wilderness areas are and how they overlap with the wildlands corridor map. So they're already implementing that, that map. And then here we have a map showing some new legislation. This is through the National Park Service, and it's called the Omnibus Public Land Management Act of 2009. Now, if there was ever a reason to consider the current economic situation a good thing, this is it, because they want to buy land and lock it up in all the dark green areas. So they want, let's see, to create 2 million acres of new wilderness areas, along with national parks, wild and scenic rivers, historic sites, scenic trails, and other protected public lands. Now, according to this article that was put out by the American Society of Landscape Architects, that would be people in my profession, they state that the new law does not go far enough to create a nationwide system of protected landscapes. And these new parks and conservation areas mean the removal of existing families, ranchers, businesses, and the historic people of the area. It means land acquisition by willing cooperation to sell the property or condemnation or eminent domain. So, you know, either willingly give it up or we're just going to come in and take it anyway. And then also the, I don't know if we have any hunters or fishers in the group, but the Fish and Wildlife Service is setting aside land through habitat stamps that you have to buy with your hunting licenses. And as of 2008, more than 19,000 acres in Colorado have been put into these conservation easements. And I could get into the flooding along the Missouri Dam, but I'm probably running short on time. The Missouri River last summer had the worst flooding along there in history. And these dams are run by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they state that they are managing them properly. But I found it was a PowerPoint presentation on their website that stated that the management of their dams had absolutely nothing to do with the Endangered Species Act. However, they have other documentation that states that that is part of their management plan, is protecting natural habitat. So this is the Missouri River Basin map, and this is the area that flows into the Missouri River. And this is the result of the Army Corps of Engineers management through last summer. And you can see the widespread flooding. The picture on the top right is I-29. It's a freeway, a 4-lane freeway that runs north and south along the Iowa-Nebraska border, and it was completely flooded all summer long under about 4 to 5 feet of water. So there was a lot of devastation there this summer. Farmers pretty much lost everything that they had. So where do we get these regulations and policies? The Club of Rome, and I mentioned them earlier, and who are they? It's an environmental think tank promoting earth reverence and New Age philosophies. They believe that the earth is being harmed, and a new system of global governance and control is the answer. And who are some of the members? Well, Al Gore, for one, Maurice Strong, who wrote the foreword in Agenda 21, Mikhail Gorbachev, David Rockefeller, Bill Clinton, George Soros, Henry Kissinger, Bill Gates, Jimmy Carter, and then some others from Europe are also in it. And then we've got Agenda 21 from the Rio Earth Summit. And then we have lots of NGOs that are part of this. And these are just some of them that I came up with. ICLEI is part of the where regulations and whatnot originate. Then we have public-private partnerships, or PPPs. You'll hear that quite frequently. And this is basically a business arrangement between a city, a county, and a private corporation or foundation. It could be with universities or associations. And basically, it is corporate fascism. So what are the implications of these regulations? I went over one this afternoon with the client that I had with the pool project. Our farming, either we have no farming or we have higher costs of farming. So the whole Central Valley is basically a dust bowl now. The picture on the right is showing the avocado and citrus orchards in Valley Center, just north of Escondido. And they've had their water cut back and their water rates raised to such a high rate that they can no longer afford to water their trees. So they're having to just cut them down because they can't afford to grow the food anymore. And then in the Midwest, where I grew up, they have to work around wetlands and other areas, which costs their fuel and just increases the amount of time it takes them to do their job. I went to a Water Smart conference in San Diego a few years ago. And in this conference, they talked about changing the social norms, expectations, and perceptions using peer pressure. Now, I thought we were all supposed to get over peer pressure when we were in junior high and high school, but they're still trying to use it on us. And they stated that momentum for cutting back water goes from resistance to acceptance to a way of life. And then we have the 20-gallon challenge, which is a 20% reduction in water use by 2020, and they use taxes to enforce and implement. And then I talked about this afternoon with your loss of private property rights. And then in Carlsbad, we have a lot of natural community conservation planning areas where it's preserved open space. And here's a map showing these NCCPs, and you can see the progression of the amount of land put into these conservation acres. So in 2000, there was just a little bit down in Southern California. In 2005, you can see some up in the northern part of California, and then a little bit more down in Southern California. And now look in 2010 at how much land has been put into these natural community conservation plans. So what is our call to action? Knowledge. Get educated. Speak out. Contact the media and let them know what's going on. Protect your land. And I think that's it. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for coming.
Then they came for me, and there was nobody left to raise their voice. It's down to that, friends. It's down to that. It's down to you and I standing up for freedom. I think America has forgotten how to be free. And all of this stuff that we've heard so far today is how far they have taken our freedoms away from us. Let me tell you about my history in California very quickly. Normally I have an hour talk that I do. I can do a 3-hour seminar. I'm going to do this whole thing in 20 minutes because, to be very honest with you, I'm like a lot of you, I got to go to the bathroom. 1969, I came out here from back east, moved into California, and turned on the television, and all of a sudden, what did I see? The Santa Barbara oil spill. Remember it? Oh, the cameras just loved it. They were out there with pictures of oiled birds and tar in the sands, and oh my goodness gracious. As bad as that was, then they had pictures of the Cuyahoga River back in Ohio that caught fire. It was so polluted, it actually caught fire. Having pictures on television back in 1969 of a river on fire was mind-boggling. And then it kind of reached its zenith when they took a picture of Mount Vernon, George Washington's home across the river from D.C., and they had a sign up that said, "Don't go near the Potomac River, polluted." Well, we were righteously indignant. So we decided to organize the first Earth Day. In 1970, we had the first Earth Day. And you know what it was about? Let's don't cut down trees for shopping bags. Let's use plastic. Let's clean up the beach. Remember the days of pop-top cans? And everybody threw the pop-top away, and you went down to the beach and you cut your foot? Let's clean up the beach. Let's don't pollute our rivers and streams. It was all so innocent. But then I came home from the first Earth Day. I turned on the television, and there was a guy named Paul Ehrlich who wrote a book called The Population Bomb back in the 1960s. And they invited him to the first Earth Day in 1970, and he spoke back in New York City. And you know what he said? We're about to have an ice age. He said by 1995, most of the living species on Earth will be extinct. He wasn't alone. There was a senator who organized it. He held the rally back in Washington, D.C. He was a senator from the good state of Wisconsin. And he spoke back there and he said the same thing. We're expecting an ice age. Well, that didn't work out. But these people over here in the environmental world, they seem to have no shortage of disasters to tell us about. Have you noticed that? I mean, the next one was we got a hole in the ozone layer. I still have to hear from one astronaut who went up into space and said, man, we're not coming back. I mean, the hole in the ozone layer that you guys have created is getting so big, you're going to be toast. We're going to stay up here. Doesn't happen. And then you'll remember the lungs of the earth were being killed as we destroyed the Amazon rainforest. Oh, well, guess what? The Amazon rainforest is still down there and the earth is still breathing pretty good. But there was this organization in New York City, and they know a good disaster when they see one. The United Nations said, we've got an international problem that needs an international solution. And so what happened was, after all of these disasters, finally in 1992, 20 years ago this year, and in June, they will have the 20th anniversary celebration of the very first Earth Summit. It's going to be back in Rio de Janeiro, and just like you've heard, these are globalists. They're about creating a one-world economy and a one-world government. They know how to live your life better than you do, and they're going to tell you how to do it. Well, they got together in '92, and they had the first Earth Summit, and then they agreed that 5 years later, they would get together in Kyoto, Japan, and they were going to have what they called the Kyoto Accords. And they came up with something called Agenda 21. Now, fade to black for just a second. It's 2006. I'm on the radio. No, I had just left the radio, I'm sorry. And some friends of mine who were in business came to me and they said, Duffy, do you know about the 2006 Global Warming Solutions Act? Oh, what? Global warming? You gotta be kidding. He said, no. You gotta check this out. It was implemented in 2007, just last year, as AB 32, Assembly Bill 32. I called up my friend Tom McClintock. Anybody here know Tom McClintock? You respect Tom McClintock? Tom and I have been friends for 20 years. We worked together at the Claremont Institute. And I called Tom and I said, hey, Tom, have you heard anything about something called AB 32? And he said, I sure have. And I said, describe it for me in one word. You know what he said? Catastrophic. And I said, why is it so bad, Tom? He said, well, the first thing is you're going to have to create a new low-carbon fuel for every car in the state. The refineries are going to have to retrofit, and they're not going to take that laying down. The price of gas is going to double. That was when gasoline was still $3 a gallon. It's well on its way to doubling. The second thing he said was electricity is going to go up by 1/3. Got a smart meter on your house? Get it taken off right away. It's an act of civil disobedience. They don't have any right to come in. And do you know what they can do with a smart meter? They can tell when you're at home. You turn the lights on. They can tell when you're cooking. They can tell when you're showering. If you've got a smart meter, you call up the electric company and you tell them, take it off of my house. Tell them you're starting to feel dizzy. "47 counties and cities have outlawed smart meters. Join them. I got to go quick because I got to go. And the third thing he said was, you know, when they ferment grapes, you know, they take grapes and they make sugar, and that creates a gas. That's a pollutant. So these guys are all going to have to buy carbon credits. It's going to cost the average vineyard in California $2 million a year to buy carbon credits. Hey, what about those cows? Well, cows have an unpleasant approach to life. They eat stuff and they either burp or they burp. And that's methane. And methane is a pollutant. According to that Agenda 21, they identified 4 greenhouse gases: methane and carbon dioxide. Please do not exhale your polluter. I have to go very quick. So we're now through Tom's explanation of the Global Warming Solutions Act. And as he was talking, I thought in my mind, wait a minute, what did you say, Tom? We have to turn our pollution levels back to 1990 by 2020. I read that someplace before. We've identified 4 greenhouse gases, and we're going to have to control them. It's carbon dioxide, methane, and 2 others. And I thought, wait a minute, this is sounding weird. And then the third one was a program called Cap and Trade. Bingo. Kyoto. Agenda 21. They snuck it right into our state law. It's already in effect, and all of those disastrous things that you've heard about are on the board. They're going to happen unless we do something to stop it, and I'm here to tell you how. The first thing is we need to educate. Have you learned anything today from this group? Are you a little... Our hostess over there, I want to thank her for putting this whole thing together. You just did. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how this is all impacting California, please go to our website, CFACT, F-A-C-T, CFACT, SoCal.org. Now, CFACT is a national and international organization. For 27 years, we've been going to places like Kyoto and attending these UN science expositions, and we're the truth tellers. We've been at this for a very long time. This is nothing new. So please go onto our website. It's the only one that's devoted exclusively to environmental regulations impacting Southern California. Educate. Second thing is, we want to motivate you. Don't just sit there, do something. Get out to your city council meeting. How many of you know where the school board meets? How many of you have been to a school board meeting in the past year? Good. How many of you go to these planning commission meetings? Oh, they're boring as... But you gotta go. You got to make your voice heard. Educate, motivate, then we want to activate. We want you to, first of all, go back to our table back there. We have a petition. We're not qualifying anything for the ballot, but we want Governor Brown and his environmental czar, Mary Nichols, from the California Air Resources Board, CARB. I've got 4 other words that you use with CARB. California Arbitrary Rules for Bankruptcy. That's what CARB stands for. We need to get a petition up there. We need to have a demonstration in front of their offices, and we're organizing it to go to Jerry Brown and to go to Mary Nichols and to tell these bureaucrats, enough is enough. Please sign our petition. Call up your representatives. Call them up and go see them. They work for you. Make an appointment. Ask for 15 minutes on their calendar. Go in and tell them you are opposed to cap and trade. You are opposed to AB 32. You are opposed. And also, call up talk radio programs. You'll be surprised at the number of people who drive home and get stuck in traffic in the afternoon or the morning, and they're looking around for something and they hear a talk show, and trust me, it gets a lot of listeners. Call in, bring up the subject, let them know how you feel. And here's the real secret to our strategy: educate, motivate, activate, and litigate. How many of you know that today in Washington, D.C., it's the second day of a hearing brought against the EPA by 20 different organizations and states opposing the Environmental Protection Agency laws against pollution? 20 organizations, 2 days worth of hearings. The media isn't talking about it. Somehow or another, trust me, if we don't overturn everything that the EPA is doing, we're going to overturn a lot of it. Watch and expect good news. Second thing is, back in December, we had 2 court cases. One of them was up in San Francisco, you know, the People's Republic of San Francisco. Well, up there in San Francisco, a judge panel heard about the low carbon emissions rules that CARB had put into effect. And you know what they did? They ruled them unconstitutional. You haven't heard that on the mainstream media, have you? And you didn't hear about the decision back in Washington, D.C. by another 3-judge panel that said cross-state pollution is absurd, and they threw it out. We can whittle away at these guys one lawsuit at a time. We need your help. We need your support. We're looking for $100,000 so that we can hire the very best attorneys available in California and file 4 lawsuits, 2 at the state level, 2 at the federal level, and we need a law firm that can take it all the way to the Supreme Court if they have to. It's going to be a powerful organization, and we've already sounded it out. It's going to cost a minimum of $100,000 to retain them. I don't have that. David Spady does not have that. But if you can help us, please donate to our legal fund. We also have back for you to pick up. These are free. If you haven't gotten one yet as a handout, please go back and pick this up. This is our campaign against cap and trade in California, and it's a little 10-point fact sheet, and I think it'll be very helpful. Talk to your friends about this. Tell them that if we really cap energy, we really trade our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Duffy. We've got about 20 minutes for some question and answers. Duffy.
They want you to get your food from 100 and 150 mile radius. Who's responsible for this is Monsanto, your Cargill, your Nature Conservancy. Nature Conservancy actually sells beef. It's called conservation beef. So there's these environmental groups who are actually in the food industry. They're not telling you. And yeah, Monsanto's not your friend. And we need to all stand, you know, and here's where here's where I think we can join with the other side, with the environmentalists, because they also, the majority of them, not the ones who are, you know, with Environmental Defense Fund and NRDC, these big ones, who they're flying around the world, they're CEOs, they are flying around the world right now doing talks and conferences about global warming, yet they are probably the biggest polluters, I think. I lost my point. Anyway, they're not your friend. Stay away from them.
And not only that, but you know, you guys that have the capability, buy some seeds now. You know, real seed, because eventually all this genetically modified stuff it doesn't reproduce. It is killing the bees. You know, there's a lot of things wrong with it. So we all need to have a storehouse. They actually literally have a massive storehouse of seeds. So we need to be just as wise and make sure we have them. I don't care if it's for barter, whatever it is, have some seeds, real food seeds. Go ahead. Next question. Shelley's the queen of seeds here, so I'll let Shelley say something.
I'm so obese, I'm all about my food. when you guys go to buy seeds, do not go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or any of those other places. There are seed exchanges online, mainly out of Utah. Utah will save the United States as far as food goes. Get your seeds, because the seeds that they're actually putting out, people will think, oh, they're organic. Oh, they're not modified. No, they're all by the same company. Get them from people that know. Go on their survival sites. Go on people with like minds and that understand Monsanto, and get your seeds from them. Otherwise, you're getting a whole lot of nothing.
Thanks, Shelley. This is all really important information, guys, so I know it's a lot to digest, but okay, next question.
What would be the main source of the information that you people have that we could go to where we would have cross-references to get all the information to cover all the aspects of what you've talked about?
Probably the best place to go, I mean, for one, in the brochures that you have when you arrive that have the programs in it, you have the websites for the organizations that are putting this on today, Americans for Prosperity, as well as the Palm Springs Patriots and Citizens for Accountable Government. We're putting a lot of information on those, and then of course we have Duffy's website and many others. These are all resources that are out there, but if you get on the internet and just start Googling information, you'll be knocked over about how much stuff is out there. And by the time you're done, I started the other day just Googling a few words because I was doing some stuff for the glossary. And before I knew it, I had this file that was like almost 4 inches thick of stuff I had printed. And there's just an enormous amount of information out there. So just start with some of the websites that are there, and it will lead you. Before we started the program, we had somebody that sent us a link for a CPAC presentation that was done in 1992. We'd been told that the U.S. Congress never acted on Agenda 21. That was a lie. That's right. On CPAC, they presented Nancy Pelosi without the Botox, presenting before Congress Agenda 21, and they acted on it. President Bush had agreed to it. This stuff had already been put in place, and yet we are told over and over again, well, it's not in force, and don't worry about it because you've got us to protect you from it. Well, that's baloney, because it's on record, and you can pull that site off of CPAC. It's there for the watching, but you just have to do the diligence to dig that stuff up. So I would say just get on the internet, start someplace, and you'll find it.
Yeah, and a good starting point is freedomadvocates.org. They have a lot of really great information on Agenda 21.
And if I can just kick one in, we have an award-winning website. You know how it's Home Depot? Think climatedepot.org. It's an award-winning website. Jim Inhofe's chief of staff, when he was head of the Environmental Senate Committee, is now operating that website on behalf of CFACT National and International. So if you go there, it's updated every hour of every day. You'll get anything new that's happening back in Washington or internationally from climatedepot.org. .com.
Next question.
Let me interject real quick. That was C-SPAN that we got the recording from, and we will be playing that at this evening's forum.
Good.
Nancy Pelosi, in her own words. Our sound guys are getting it all geared up now for this evening's forum. But it was on C-SPAN, not CPAC. Just as a correction, okay? Same with those EPA hearings. I don't know how many of you watch C-SPAN, but I'll tell you what, I've been watching those EPA hearings. And pay attention to C-SPAN. You'll see a lot of things that you will never hear about in the media. Next question.
My question is for Debbie. This goes back to Monsanto, who is everybody's enemy as far as I can tell. But recently there was something on Discovery saying that as far as our seeds go, in getting real seeds, not sterile seeds, Monsanto has been suing farmers because their seeds have blown onto farmers' lands, and they are suing the farmers for that. And the farmers depend on their own seed to start their crops. And they're really in a world of hurt right now because they don't have anything. Monsanto has everything. Is that true? Have you heard anything about that? And how can we stop it?
I think this one's working now. So I have heard that as well. I don't know a lot about it. I do know that Monsanto, which is Roundup, and our government is making farmers, some farms and some farmers and ranchers use Roundup along stream beds. Remember, they're supposed to be protecting our water.
Right.
And Roundup is chemicals. Here's, let me add this to that. Hi, Dad. My mom and I accidentally burnt down one of our houses, and a small house. It was a guest house on the ranch, and we had tons of Miracle Grow, which is also all part of the same thing, and for my mom's flowers. And so we had to take it and burn it, and you should have seen all the colors that this fire. It was extraordinary. I mean, it was beautiful. Pinks and greens, and yet like colors we had never even seen before. And it's all the chemicals in. So I don't know, I've heard that. I've also heard that they're in India, the farmers in India are going through the same thing where they can't propagate the seeds, otherwise they lose their farming rights forever. So I can't speak to it with authority. I have heard like you have, and I'm not surprised.
I do know Archer Daniel Midland is also involved in that, and they're buying up all the good seed and replacing it with GMOs. So just so you understand, these companies are not our friends.
Maybe you can mention the book.
Okay, next question.
Next session.
I think-
This will be the last question.
Okay, I think the underlying theme to all of this, if everybody doesn't realize it, is all about control. And I think there's a section in Agenda 21 that you guys haven't addressed, and that is that they seem to think that we're overpopulated when we're not, and they want population control. And the last thing I'm going to say is you can damn well bet that the aristocrats and the elites, it's not going to apply to them.
Does anyone want to address that?
I will say one thing that if this evening we're going to touch on some of those points, we're going to get into some of the real big picture things, and we're going to talk about some of the philosophies that have been shaping the Agenda 21 program, including, for example, Paul Ehrlich's stuff on the population bomb and so on. There's really a background behind all of that, and this digs deep back into some of the early environmental writings that have been, worked over and over again through, since the 1930s, really. But it really picked up with Rachel Carlson and her book Silent Spring, and then launched off from that. So anyway, we'll be getting into that more this evening and some of the big picture stuff.
All right, on that note, I want to thank our panel and thank each and every one of you for attending. Our evening session begins at 6, so you have time if you want to leave and come back and bring a few friends with you. And we'll cover some additional material at that time, and check out the tables around the room on your way out.
And be sure you sign up to join us and help us fight this fight.